Another side of legalism says this: if you don't have a bunch of money, and if you're not financially successful, if you don't drive certain cars and live in certain places, you must be not being blessed by God. And you must not be okay by God. And if you're really doing things God's way, you're going to be prosperous and you're going to be blessed and all this stuff. It's called the prosperity gospel. It's the biggest farce and false teaching known to conservative Christianity today. And so the fact of the matter is you can err on one side or the other. Some legalists will say things like this: you're not going to send your child to that kind of school. I mean, you're definitely going to like homeschool them, or the other thing is hey, you're definitely going to send your kid to the public school. You're not going to homeschool them, are you? Or you're going to definitely, are you guys watching too much TV? Or are you going to those R-rated movies? Are you doing certain things? And so it's all these lists of do's and don'ts. And man, they are judging you and they are looking down the nose at you, and all of the joy and all of the freedom and all of the things that are good and awesome about following Christ, they will just choke the joy and choke the life right out of you and them. And they're some of the most miserable people, and they cause the most confusion and the most destruction in churches that I've ever seen in my entire life. I worked for a pastor one time. He's a good man, but he has issues like everybody else. And I'll never forget this. This guy had to sign a policy, and the policy was that I would never drink alcohol. And I remember having a serious problem with that, and I just kind of went with it because I was going to submit to authority. Well, the thing that happened was there was a young gal on our staff, and she had a fiance, and she had other convictions otherwise, and I guess she had signed the paper too. She went out to dinner at like Red Lobster or something. She's having a glass of wine. Who walks in but this pastor? Sees her having this glass of wine, goes back the next day and fires her. And my deal is legalism. It will kill us, and it will kill you. And you've got to decide which way you're going to go. Is it going to be Jesus plus certain behaviors? Or is it going to be Jesus plus nothing? And what Paul says, he says this in verse 10 of chapter 2, is you've got all the fullness in Christ. Why do you need anything else? Like that song said, he is more than enough for us. There's nothing more you have to add. And so be freed up from some of the stuff that you experienced as a kid, and be freed up from some of the religiosity that you don't have to keep anymore, and be freed up from some of the behaviors that you have kept because you're trying to find life in them and they will never bring you life, and certain dietary ways that you're trying to live or force on other people, or certain kinds of tradition. Let them go and let it just be Jesus alone. He is enough for us. And Paul says this in verse 18. He says, these things, talking about all the feasts and all the festivals and all the eating and drinking and all of the things that are in this passage about Jesus, but these other things. He says, these are the shadows. Shadows. Talking about the Old Testament things, the Jewish things, all these feasts and festivals. These are the shadows of the things that were to come. Now the reality is found in Christ. It's like a dad who's off serving our country in the Middle East, right? And he sends home pictures, and he sends home sweatshirts, Camp Fallujah and this kind of thing to his family, right? And so they've got the pictures all around the house. They show their friends that have never met their dad. Hey, that's my dad in that picture. Hey, this is my dad. This is him doing this, or this is the sweatshirt he sent, or this is where he is now, and we're getting online, and we're seeing him, through Skype and all this kind of stuff, and it's just a shadow. But then he comes home from the service, and they no longer have to grab, they no longer have to hug pictures, they have to point out who their dad is and all this stuff, because now they've moved from the shadow to the reality, and dad's home, and he is who he is, and we don't have to worry about what's coming. We have him here. And that's the same way. Paul says it's Jesus, him, not the stuff in the Old Testament or other things that other people create that point to him. Don't settle. Don't have regrets. Don't take the 180 and be at a place where you are doing Jesus plus anything else. Don't settle for anything else but Jesus alone, because Jesus plus nothing equals everything.